So funny. All right, so let me just go everywhere and check it out here. All right, so we're on Facebook, so we're good there. Let me just check YouTube and I'll check LinkedIn and we will go ahead and get started.
That sounds good. I should have pulled them up to see any interaction.
Oh, no worries. All right, so let's see, we're good on LinkedIn. We've already got people watching, so we'll start in 1 second, everyone. Just making sure everything's good here. And let me just check YouTube. We're not connected to YouTube yet, so what's going on? Hold on. It's definitely been slower. Like pre-COVID, I think it was faster.
Yeah, it's probably all the folks at home and the companies messing with the bandwidth.
All right, we are good on YouTube. So we are ready to go if you are good.
I'm good to go.
All right. So let me just. All right. So welcome everyone, Nick Wagner Sr. It's Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, which means I am here for another episode of the Full Potential Podcast. We do this almost every Sunday night, Ojala. Although we did skip the Super Bowl because I was not going to compete with the game and Tom Brady and the halftime show. But we do it almost every Sunday night, where I bring amazing guests like you on to have you share your career journey. And I believe that individuals like yourself sharing your career journey inspires others to kind of figure out what could be, if that makes sense. So welcome to the show. So I will let you formally introduce yourself in 1 second, but we are welcoming Ojala Naeem to the show tonight. So Ojala, thank you so much for making time on this Sunday night.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a good way to end the nice weekend.
Well, I am always inspired to start my weeks on Sunday night interviewing people like yourself and hearing about someone's career journey. So why don't we start with my favorite question, which is how I start every interview. When you meet someone for the first time and they ask, who are you, right? So who is Ojala? Like how do you answer that? I'll just preface that. Let's rewind the clock pre-COVID when we actually got to meet people in person
Right.
and not just through video.
Yep. Yep. If I was answering that question broadly, right, without having a specific kind of action plan in mind, I would say I am a problem solver. I'm someone that just likes to get things done. If you know the term GSD, I'll keep it censored for the audience here, but call me a GSDer. But I like to solve problems. I like to figure out what's wrong in the world, what's wrong in front of me, what's wrong, what is the problem we're trying to solve, and let's fix it. Let's solve it. I'm really someone that's driven by helping others. So solving problems for myself at some point will inevitably solve problems for others. I think that's who I am. That's what drives me.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's very selfless, so I appreciate that. And we've been connected on LinkedIn for a good amount of time, and we both reside here in Connecticut, and I've been following all the great work that you've been doing for years now, and I'm just so happy that we're finally able to get you on the show and have you share your journey, because I think it's for people that don't know you, I think they're going to be shocked at how much you've accomplished in such a short amount of time because you're still very young. So, and we'll get into all that, but I just want to make sure that I say thank you again and tell you how excited I am to have you. If we go back to you as a little kid, right? Because I always like to rewind to when we were little, because I feel who we are today and where we go in our career, it depends a lot on how we started our lives.
Yep, absolutely.
Did you know when you were a little kid that you were a problem solver and that you were going to one day work with startups and have this huge focus on innovation and philanthropy? Like, did you have a sense of that's what you wanted to do when you were in elementary school, or
No
did you
way.
have dreams to do something else? Like, what was the thing you wanted to do when you were growing up?
Yeah, no, I definitely not innovation and startups. I mean, I don't think growing up that was even a thing you heard about, right? It's been a buzzword of the last decade, but prior to that, you're like innovation, startups, like what is that? Definitely not what I thought I'd be doing. I knew I wanted to again like solve problems is a big thing. a little bit of a backstory. So, eldest daughter of immigrants. I'm the eldest in my family on both sides. So the eldest grandchild between like 25, or I think we're at 27 now, grandchildren. So a lot of pressure there to begin with. And then, when I was in school, I mean, I got a lot of pressure, and if there's any of fellow South Asians listening, they'll probably understand this, but a lot of pressure to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. That was kind of the three options that were laid at the table. That's what folks saw as being like, successful and something that really, has status and people look up to. And that kind of pushed me away from a lot of those things. So like, was interested in science, but was like, I don't want to be a doctor just because my parents, everyone else in my family is saying, hey, you should be a doctor. Like, it's a pretty smart kid, really did well in school, like top of my class, all of that. So they're like, all right, she's going to be a doctor. And I was like, no, that's definitely off the table.
I think as a father, I should be taking notes.
Yeah.
On what not to do with my kids. Right?
Reverse psychology is real.
I think you bring up a great point. Right? When parents push their kids to do a certain thing, what did you do? You went away from it.
Not, yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm glad you shared that, because I think that's a really important point in your journey.
Yep, absolutely. So that was definitely a big piece of it. And then kind of going from there, I was really interested in law, and for a bunch of different reasons. One, just understanding law was fascinating to me. Like, what the world runs on, like what everything from like the Constitution to like all the historical things that tie into law to like how has, the kind of triangle of what I see as being like, society and then economics and like legal and politics kind of coming together. Like, how has each of those things driven the other over history? So that was something that I was like quickly, and I would say probably like middle school years, was like, all right, this is something I definitely want to do. And then from there, I was sort of on that, okay, I'm going to go to school, probably do pre-law and kind of focus in on that, but I was always open to trying new things. So, when I went to high school, I went to a Catholic high school here in Waterbury, Holy Cross High, and I kind of was exposed to a lot more than just your traditional like academics, right? So, I grew up Muslim, and so I wasn't familiar with like what Catholicism is, and that was a fascinating kind of window, and taught me a lot about people, taught me a lot about like similarities and differences across the board, and kind of like, okay, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences, and how do we sort of kind of bring all those pieces together? And then for undergrad, I went to a Jesuit college, so I went to Fordham University in New York City. It's interesting. I was actually one of those kids that said, whatever I do, I need to make sure I go to college outside of Connecticut. Because I was born and raised here. I grew up in Waterbury, and I was like, I can't stay here. If I stay here, the only thing I'll be doing is working in insurance. My dad worked in insurance. Most of the people I knew worked in insurance. I was like, I gotta leave. I gotta get out. I gotta go to a big city, and all those fun things that come with it. So
now I want to pause you for 1 second. So was it expected of you to go to college?
Yes, absolutely. I think that was definitely like there was no questions about it. I think that the harder part was it wasn't just expected that I go to college, but it was expected that I go to either a very prestigious college or get a full ride somewhere, right? And so like that was a very big thing. So I remember going through like my interview processes, and my parents being like, "Oh, cool, yeah, Yale, Harvard, like let's get all those on the list." I'm like, guys, do you understand how this all works? And again, they did it, right? Like I was kind of that first tester child because I'm the first, literally in my generation, in my family, that's going through this process. So
to your point, that's a lot of pressure.
That was quite a lot of pressure, and so went through the process, and it was interesting. It was such a fascinating experience to try to figure out like, okay, how do you balance out like getting accepted to great colleges and universities, but then also looking at financial aid, which was like something that none of us had really thought about until that point. So that obviously played a big factor into my decision as to where I went to school. And I was excited going to school in New York City, and Fordham's an awesome university, had kind of a great rounding, and really enjoyed my time there. Again, exposed myself to more than just what my major was, which interestingly enough, I found the one major that allowed you to be as flexible as possible, which was international studies. You could take economics, you could take poli-sci, you could take law, you could take language, like whatever. They had certain requirements, and you kind of mix them all together, right? So I focused on economics and law, again, kind of going in with that passion that I had, but specifically under that international lens, because that was something that was really, really of interest to me, right? Like, how do we think about the world? How do we think about things globally? How do we help folks? Like I had a huge interest in immigration law, so did a bunch of internships with organizations, either nonprofits or law firms that were working in that space, and saw that's a pretty tough and rough, working area. You've got some amazing people working hard in that space, but not necessarily making a ton of money. And so I still pre-law, going through that whole process, doing a ton of legal internships. And as I got closer to like graduating, I was like, all right, before I decide that I take the LSAT to go to law school, right? So I've got a decent amount of debt already, and I'm trying to start thinking about like, hey, I gotta start paying this off when I graduate. How's this gonna work? No, like no real idea because no one else in my family's had to go through that, right? Um, and so I'm like, maybe I should take a pause. How about I work a little bit, just make sure this is exactly what I want to do before I do another 3 years and probably like another 100 grand in debt or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. I said, all right, let's work, let's see how it goes. So after I graduated, I was working for a legal search firm in New York City. Felt really awesome. Was on Park Ave and kind of living that like lens into that life and totally on the bottom of the totem pole, but like great exposure and probably the best exposure of my life because it helped me decide that I do not want to go to law school. Seeing kind of the way that a lot of the life of a lawyer, the kind of I'm not gonna say cutthroatness in the industry, but just how much you have to work and like regardless of what industry you're going in, if you're trying to make ends meet and you're trying to pay your bills and make sure you've got money coming through the door to pay off your debts, you're gonna be sitting behind a desk and reviewing papers and contracts and just a lot of that stuff for a very long time. And that was just not me. Like I'm a people person. I like talking to people. I like engaging with people. I do not want to be staring at paper. So that helped me decide, okay, this is not what I want to do. The other
So
thing, ironically,
it's a really interesting point you bring up because you enjoyed the experience,
yep,
but it actually helped you realize what you didn't want to do,
yep,
and I think that's such a huge takeaway. And I think a lot of I think some young people, and I have a lot of early career professionals that listen to the podcast, might think like, wow, was that like a big letdown for you? But it sounds like it actually really helped you better,
yeah.
have a clearer picture of what you wanted to do, and probably that experience probably prevented you from taking a direction that you might not have ultimately been happy with.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, and it's interesting because like I wouldn't say that it's like completely shut me away from the idea of law school or a legal education. It shut me away from like that career
Right.
in that moment of time, right?
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
I always say that I might 10, 20 years down the road want to go to law school for that education for a million different reasons, right? It's something I'm still super interested in. I love learning more about, but that time, that moment just didn't feel right to me. So I'm glad I learned that pretty quickly on, and then kind of thought about, okay, well, what's next for me? So I again, my family's all from Connecticut, and I was visiting home over a weekend and just looking at different things that were going on. And I came across Reset. There was like an article in the paper or something. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, right? So like the concept and idea of like incubators and accelerators and startups and innovation and entrepreneurship in Connecticut. Like again, born and raised here, I was like, this is new. Like, have not heard about this growing up. So it was pretty cool and did some digging and I came across their website and they were hiring at the time. So I was like, let's check it out. I'm young, like 21 years old at that time, and like I don't have much to lose, so let's see what it is all about. So I applied for the opening, and the recruiter called me up, and I came back home on a Friday from New York and came in for an interview, and I remember back then just being a little like, this is a big vision. Like the vision that was laid out for Reset that, Kate Emery at the time, the founder, and I worked with Michelle Cody at the time too, who's now over at CCEI and Launch. And it was a really powerful and exciting vision. And it tied in a lot of different pieces of like, they wanted to work on some legislative stuff with benefit corporations. They wanted to do programming for entrepreneurship and innovation, tying it with colleges and universities. And it's just like, it was a pretty exciting picture to be painted. So um, I got the job offer and I said, all right, well, do I leave New York City, which is kind of hard to leave. You've got your friends, you've got the food, like in the nightlife and all that. And I said, it's all right. I'm young enough, like not much to lose. Let's give it a go. Probably the best decision I made in my life. Moving back home, moving back to Connecticut, being with my family, and then starting on that journey at Reset. I mean, that's That was, I was there for 7 years, and it was the most incredible kind of, I think, experience that I could have asked for.
Now, I want to talk about how you went from the job that you started in to running the entire organization. So we'll talk
Yep,
about that. But for the audience, can you just define, like, when you say incubator and accelerator? Can you just
sure.
share with the audience what that means? Because not everyone's probably is as close to that language as you are.
Yeah, yeah. So an incubator, we raise chickens, and no, I'm kidding. I actually got that a lot, right? So when I moved back and I told my parents it's an incubator, social enterprise incubator, they're like chickens, farming, like what you like. We know you don't want to go to law school, but like
I
this is
love it.
really going left turn. But no, so an incubator is really where you bring in different business ideas. So, idea on a startup that you might want to get off the ground or just some new type of business or service. And the incubator helps you go from an ideation to like actually testing something out in market and seeing if it's viable or not. And then the accelerator is sort of that next step, which takes a kind of proven out, hardened idea, business, product, or service, and really helps you figure out, okay, how do you launch and scale this thing? And there was a lot more to Reset than just that, right? As I mentioned, I mean, we were doing things around legislation for better laws for entrepreneurs, specifically social entrepreneurs. So those would be entrepreneurs that have a business that has a double or triple bottom line. So they're looking to make a profit, but also make an impact. And that was something that really resonated with me, right? Like, again, always wanting to help and always wanting to find like, how do you have good balance? That was a pretty good,
Absolutely.
felt really good to be in that realm.
No, and I appreciate you kind of just defining that for my guest, for my audience. So, the job that you started in, you quickly made, advanced throughout the organization. So I want to talk about how did you do that, first of all, right? So, it's only your second job out of college. You had never worked in this space before. How did you adjust? How did you learn, so quickly, where you were able to get promoted multiple times over during the time that you were there?
Yep.
What was the I guess what was some of your advice for people that move into this space that maybe they've never worked in before?
Yep. So for me, I think what really made that happen was trust, risk, and opportunity. So trust, I had really great relationships, both from some of my mentors, but also from being honest, giving feedback, not being afraid to share what you think or what you believe in or ideas that you have with those around you. And I think that really helped establish a lot of great relationships, and again, establish that trust where people felt, at least I think people felt, that hey, there's something here, and we can trust her with not just being able to take on more responsibility, but also see that responsibility through. So, there's when you get trust, you do have things that you have to live up to. So making sure you're delivering on kind of the promises you're making, right? May that be for the organization, may that be for the people that you're serving, may that be for the entrepreneurs. But that's a big piece. And that trust piece is not just internal to your organization or with the people you're serving, but it's also all the partners around you, right? So Reset is part of a very big ecosystem, and one driver alone in this state cannot make entrepreneurship and innovation a big thriving thing. So over the years, building those relationships and speaking to and connecting with, and again, having honest conversations with a lot of different leaders across the board that were trying to just get more business activity, more entrepreneurship and innovation off the ground. That was super important. And, when I started, I was just like, young, like bright-eyed 22-year-old being like, hey, I'm gonna come in, I'm super excited, and like, let me tell you what I think. And it took some time to earn some trust in the community. But I gotta say, like, that's one thing about Hartford and Connecticut. It's not, it's not a massive community. If you really want to get to know people, you can do it pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
And they're really genuinely great people. I don't think I've met anyone that I felt like this person is trying to block me or be a hindrance or doesn't want to work together. I just haven't had that experience. Sometimes it might be a little bit more harder than other cases, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. But I've yet to meet someone that's just like trying to do you harm, right? Which I'll be honest with you, in New York City, I saw a lot of that. In the legal realm, I saw a ton of that, right? Like it was very cutthroat environment. So that was a big thing. So you've got trust. Taking a risk, super important. So having the confidence in yourself and your abilities to say, you know what, I'm going to take the risk to share the idea that I have,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to take the risk to give feedback to someone that might not necessarily be asking for it, but I think that I can do it in a way that's going to be helpful to them and myself as well. Taking a risk to try something new, right? So, like, again, going back to like 2012 to 2013, like incubators, accelerators, entrepreneurship, innovation, like it was all just kind of bubbling up. Um, it was an open landscape. Like, let's try a bunch of things out. Like, let's throw things at the wall, see what sticks, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, we move on and figure out the next thing. So those elements, super, super important. And then the third part is opportunity, right? So tied in with risk, really important to be able to identify, like, hey, I think this is an opportunity. Maybe it's out of our comfort zone. Maybe it's something we haven't thought about before. But like, let's step back. Let's kind of analyze opportunity, see how we might be able to tackle it. Obviously, again, on the risk side, like, is it, how much of a risk is it for us to do? Maybe me personally or the organization as a whole, and then making a decision to do it. So I think those three things were super critical. And again, having a great community, great leadership, and just great partners and coworkers along the way just went such a long way for me.
I think that was I love I absolutely love how you laid that out, and one thing I just wanted to reinforce for everyone listening that you mentioned helped you immensely was being able to give honest feedback, and that is not easy. It is not easy for anyone, right? Because it's great to tell people, "Oh, hey, you're great. This is fantastic. Everything's perfect." It's hard to give like that more constructive feedback, right? So
Yep.
the fact that you were able to figure that out at such a young age, clearly you realize how powerful that is because it helped you. But I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's something that it's not easy.
No, it's not easy at all, and I'm not gonna pretend that like I had it down right the first time, or even do today. Right? It's a process. It's a learning process. Giving and receiving feedback is just an ongoing learning process. I think you just no one is perfect at it, and it can be scary. It can be challenging, and sometimes it can be really great. But
Yeah.
doing it goes a long way.
So you ended up being the managing director of Reset before you ended up leaving, and so I want the last question I want to ask about Reset. So obviously it's from when you started there to when you left. You know, the whole idea of entrepreneurship and innovation in Connecticut, a lot of other things like the ecosystem grew immensely, which Reset was such a huge part of and still is today.
Yep.
But I just want to ask the question before we get to your decision to leave and go to Travelers. So you were working at a nonprofit, you were leading a nonprofit. Was the and it was obviously a pretty small team, right? It wasn't
Yep.
like you were working at a Fortune 500 company. Was that experience something that you believe you will go back to again in the future, working at such a small organization? Like, did you enjoy working at a small organization, or did you find it really difficult, or both?
I think it's both, right? It has its ups and downs. And I can probably compare. I have something more to compare to now, being at Travelers, and being at part of a company that's, almost 35,000 employees. Definitely can compare. I think the benefits of a smaller organization is you have more autonomy. You have more space to kind of do things you might want to try out, right, within the parameters of a mission. And you have more opportunity, right? So when there's few people and there's a lot to get done, it's a matter of rolling up your sleeves
Mm-hmm.
and raising your hand and saying, hey, I'll jump into this thing. Some of the challenges in a smaller organization, you're definitely strapped on resources. May those be, people, right? So I hate calling people human resources. It just feels weird. So you've got your people, and then you've got your resources. Being strapped on people is hard because you're trying to do so much, and sometimes that means you're working 12-hour, 16-hour days. Sometimes it means, all the time, it means you're wearing multiple hats. I think that's part of like my growth at Reset was because I was putting on different hats where needed, right? Like, this is an opportunity. You need me to step in to take care of like build out the incubator, like let me jump in there. Or hey, we gotta like we're growing as an organization, and now we gotta start thinking about our operational structure and how we're gonna grow and scale. Like let me jump in. So I think that can be challenging. It can be time consuming. I think for me personally, at the time where I was in my life, young, kind of super hungry, a lot of time, not a lot of responsibilities on my shoulders. It was easier for me to be like, I'm going to put in those 12-hour days and those 16-hour days and like whatever is needed to just get the job done. So I think it's got its ups and downs. I do think I would go back into a similar situation down the road. Would it be tomorrow? Probably not. I think I've got a lot of learning and growing to do where I am today. But what I think long term, I don't think I'm like turned off by the idea of a smaller organization or smaller team and so on.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's a very common question a lot of early career individuals have. Do I want to go to a big company or a small company? So I appreciate you
Yep.
giving some insights. So you left Reset to go work at Travelers, the property and casualty insurer.
Yeah, I
What was
went.
it?
I went to an insurance company after saying I got to leave Connecticut, so I don't work in insurance. It's pretty great.
So what was it like to make that decision? And let's be honest though. I mean, you left for a role in innovation, so you left for a very unique role. How did you end up making that decision?
So it's interesting. I did not have the role before I made the decision to leave. This was 2018. In early 2018, I remember having a conversation with Kate Emery, the founder, and she was the board chair at the time. And I said, "Hey, Kate, here's where we are now. I've been with the organization. I've sort of grown into the managing director role. It's been a lot of growth for me. I feel like I'm hitting the point where I think my both growing opportunities, but personal learning opportunities are going to be less and less, right? You kind of grow and then you hit a little bit of a ceiling or a wall or whatever you want to call it. And I said, we should probably start thinking about sort of succession planning. I don't know if it's in the best interest for the organization for me to be here a year from now, right? Because if I don't feel like I've got something to work towards or grow towards, like I might not be as good for the organization.
That makes sense.
Um, and it was, and again, I had this conversation because Reset to me was just, it was a job and it was part of my career, but it was so much tied into my passions that I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure, regardless of me being there or not, it's poised for success. And then over the summer, so that summer I got married, so big changes coming in. Got married with Hartford, a lot of change coming in, and started thinking about kind of what my future looks like. And I had a coworker, Hiba Murray, who was on as a program associate, had been working with us for a couple of years, had taken an opportunity in DC. And so she was going to be leaving, and it would have left the gap in the programming team. And that was an opportunity for me to talk to the board and to Kate and say, hey, I think that as we think about how we want to build that up and build a team up, I don't know if I should be the one that's making the next hiring decision. I think we should start thinking about what that impact looks like, right? I mean, it's a big piece of the team. We want to make sure it's set up for long-term success. And if I am going to be gone within the next year, maybe we should start thinking about, what other pieces need to happen. So we started our search for my replacement. I think it was like mid to late summer, probably like a July-ish timeframe. And we put out the job posting and started looking, and we met Sarah. I want to say it was like August or September. I think she came in, and she was awesome. I was super excited to meet her and just get to know her a little bit more. And her story was, not too dissimilar from mine. She's a Connecticut native, and then had moved down to DC and was looking to come back. And so that felt good to me, and it felt really good to be a part of that process and to really think about like, hey, I want to make sure the next person coming in is going to be as passionate about this work as I was. And so, of course, she was coming from DC, so she couldn't start till December. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Gives us a few months and gives me some time to really start thinking about like what my exit strategy is going to look like, when I'm going to leave, and all that stuff. So it was really funny because I saw the Travelers job posting about a week, almost exactly a week before we at Reset made the announcement of me transitioning out as executive director. So like there was nothing set in stone. Like it was totally, again, going back to like taking risks, right? Like I had
Yeah.
enough I had enough confidence in myself and what I had achieved and how hard I worked to know that like I'll be okay. Like once I'm ready to say, okay, I'm on the job market, I think I'll be all right. I wasn't like crazy worried about it. And then that's kind of where the conversation started with Travelers. And I wrapped up my last day at Reset was like the end of January. I still had not gotten like an official offer or anything like that from Travelers. So I was like, it's cool. Like I've got faith, and I had a couple other really exciting opportunities too. So it was actually interesting to try to figure out which direction I want to go in, because you had Travelers, which is the kind of corporate innovation opportunity. I had one that was with a social enterprise, like a social enterprise business, and one that was in economic development. And all three of those things are like just really interesting to me. And I ultimately went with the Travelers offer because it was something that I had not been exposed to yet. Right? You're talking about large company, corporate innovation, its own kind of layers and levers of bureaucracy, which is kind of similar to the economic development government stuff. And it was an exciting opportunity for me, and I'm glad I had taken that jump.
Yeah, no, and you're working for a great company. We personally, I have a lot of family and friends that work at Travelers and really enjoy the culture. And I think you guys do a great job taking care of your customers and your clients. For my audience, I know obviously you can't share a lot about what you do, but in a couple sentences, what is your role at Travelers
Yep.
today? And it's obviously very different from what you were doing at Reset.
It is and it isn't. So my role is to kind of oversee our broader kind of innovation portfolio within the personal lines business. So think your home insurance, your auto insurance, your all the kind of personal things that come under there. And what I really do is help identify, okay, where are the areas where we have either potential to innovate, and innovate could mean do things better, do things faster, do things differently, add more value for our customer, add more value for ourselves, as kind of people working behind the scenes on what makes insurance so magical. And so it's pretty broad ranging. It's not like it just focuses on like this one like hyper lasered in area. I'm not just like in underwriting, or I'm not just looking at like kind of the future of insurance and how like artificial intelligence might affect that. So it's pretty broad. And in a day to day, a lot of what I do is, can be tying in some of the stuff that we did with our entrepreneurs at Reset, which was like understanding the problem. Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve, right? Like, what
You're
like
you're a problem solver.
I'm a problem solver. So what's the problem we're trying to solve?
Full
Let's get
circle.
into exactly. Let's get to the root of that problem. What is it that we're trying to learn, right? Understand what we're trying to learn, and figure out kind of, okay, where do we take it from here? How do we like do new things? How do we experiment? How do experimentation? How do we experiment? How do we like test new things out that are going to help us understand the problem area better so that we can solve it better? And that's at a very high level what I do. And sometimes that means we're trying new things internally behind closed doors. Sometimes that means we're working with startups. We've got a pretty robust ecosystem that we are able to tap into both here locally in Hartford, but also globally. We've got some of my kind of partners and coworkers are based out of the UK, so we've got some kind of boots on the ground there that can help us kind of tap into what's happening in the UK markets. We work closely with accelerators like Plug and Play out in Silicon Valley to understand what are some of the cooler new insurtechs that are coming out of there, and how do they tie into like the problem areas we're interested in. So still kind of hands in those startups and understanding kind of, is a startup real? And I think one of the best parts about coming from kind of the other side, right? I make the joke when I joined Travelers, I said, "Yep, I'm joining the dark side." Like, woo, like let's see how this goes. But it's actually it's such a like a lot of people see corporate as that, but it's nice to be there and be able to talk to a startup and be like, "Let me give you some real advice," right? Because like when I was at Reset and we were trying to get startups to find clientele that were at these corporations, we're trying to get them to understand how to approach them and how to stay
Hmm.
on top of them without being too naggy, right? I get like, I don't know, 20, 30 like startup cold emails every day. And So sometimes I'll like actually respond to one and say like, I really like how you wrote this email. Like, I like that you're actually reaching out to me
That's
about
awesome.
something that I need, not something just random that you know is copy and pasted to 3,000 other, contacts that you saw on LinkedIn. So it's kind of a good full circle situation.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, and you obviously we wish you the best of luck in your role at Travelers, and your company does provide a lot of peace of mind for your customers, which is really important. So I think that I know insurance is such a big part of our our economy here in Connecticut. So
Mm-hmm.
I love how you kind of take the lens of innovation and entrepreneurship and bring that to Travelers. So I think that's fantastic. So I always close with the same question, which is, what is the one thing that's helped you reach your full potential? So you've been successful in multiple different types of roles, including a nonprofit, now in the corporate world. But if you had to share it with my audience, what is that one thing that's helped you be successful during your short career but very successful career at this point?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, the same thing I said when you asked about what helped me grow quickly at Reset. It's trust, risk, and opportunity. So it's three things. I see them kind of tied in together really closely. Um, Being able to trust in others, build trust with others, trust in myself, be willing to take that opportunity that sometimes feels risky, I think has been such a critical part. And I've had amazing people kind of there for me, supporting me, being great mentors, or just kind of there for whatever I need along the way. And I am so thankful for that because that's definitely helped me get to where I am today. But take that risk, take that opportunity. Being kind of the daughter of immigrants, seeing the risks that they took, kind of moving here. My dad's whole family's back in Pakistan, and he sees them once every several years, and that's a big risk, right? But seeing them do that, I guess to some extent for me, I look at risks and opportunities in a very different way. I don't worry about, I don't fear kind of losing. I don't believe in failure. I don't think failure is a thing. It's you could lose, and that's okay because you learn a lot from loss. So don't believe in failure. Just keep going.
I think that's well said. And I know you mentioned at the beginning of the interview that you were the first really to go through the college process and kind of take this journey. And I'm sure your parents are super proud of what you've accomplished, because it's just I think great. You've been able to give back to your community. You've been able to obviously help so many people along the way. So I appreciate you making time and sharing your journey with us. We will go ahead and make sure we link in the show description to your LinkedIn profiles if anyone wants to get in touch with you and
For sure.
maybe hear about what you're doing at Travelers, or hear about more about what you did at Reset, or hear a little bit about the philanthropic work that you do, which we didn't get to jump into tonight. Maybe dive into there as well. So thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Just such a great story, and we wish you the best.
Thanks, Nick, and good
Thank
luck
you.
with this. This is an awesome initiative.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.